Okay, so hi, we're Emma and Rebecca. So I'm the engagement officer for the project, and Rebecca is the conservation officer. So Kent's Magnificent Moths is, I'm going to say, a newish project now. It started in April, and it's a project funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and it's been led by Butterfly Conservation until 2024. And skip it across. There we go. Okay, so this is the largest moth conservation project in a region that's ever been launched. So we'll be really shining the spotlight on the Southeast's rare moths. We'll be coordinating management of our priority species, which we'll go through in a minute, on a landscape scale. And then my role of it will be raising awareness within the local communities on just how special it is, how different species are on your doorstep, and 3 of the 8 priority species are exclusively resident in Kent, with a further 2 just being found on the border of Kent and into East Sussex. So this map kind of shows where the UK's rarest moth species are distributed. There are a few hotspots like around the south, but what kind of set Kent species apart and why the project is based here is that many of them can't be found anywhere else in the UK. So that is because the south of England is where the northern climatic range limit even of many species are, that spreads up from Europe. So with Kent's proximity to the continent and kind of the wide variety of habitats, kind of with the coast and the woodlands and the chalklands, it kind of means that a lot of species that have been declined across their former ranges have, because of habitat loss, have managed to retain a bit of a foothold in Kent. So we're going to meet our 8 little moths. There we go. So these are the project's 8 priority moths, and just introduce you to them, and then we'll focus on the ones found in Sussex. So the ones on the right, obviously the Sussex emerald and the marshmallow moth will be our focus kind of in Sussex. So a number of these moths have previously been seen before in Sussex, such as the white-spotted sable did used to be recorded from the low weald, but hasn't been seen in about 20 years. And then bright wave, so the one on the top, does get recorded in Sussex, but it's thought to be kind of migrants from the continent. There's been no evidence yet that they're actually breeding in Sussex. And similar to both the strawbell and the black-veined moth, again, both of them are very rare immigrants into Sussex, but their breeding populations are pretty much confined to Kent now, with the strawbell just having one site left in Surrey, which is the only place you can see it out of Kent. So we'll be spreading the word about these and about 24 other kind of priority moth species and 6 of our rarer butterfly species that can be found within the same landscape as our 8 top priority moths. So the species, we need to increase surveying for those species to kind of understand their distribution, so that we can like target conservation advice, and we can kind of work the management to where it is most needed. So the marshmallow moth. So this is a marshmallow plant, a member of the mallow family, and is found in kind of marshy areas and ditches. The plants around Romney Marsh area support this marshmallow moth, and it solely feeds on the roots of this plant as a caterpillar. So we're working with community groups, volunteers, garden centres to grow hundreds of these plug plants, so we can add to existing areas and new areas of habitat that are managed specifically for the marshmallow moth. So to support the population of a moth, to support a population of this moth even, requires a dedicated area and over hundreds of flowering spikes of marshmallow plants. So most gardens don't have enough space to kind of get involved and house this kind of moth, because they don't have enough flowering spikes, they won't have enough roots to kind of feed on as a caterpillar. But if anyone is willing to help us, we can help by growing up these seeds into plug plants and then coming to one of our planting days on next summer. So yeah, because we're also advising landowners for kind of sensitively timed management to ensure that these plants aren't disturbed when the larval is feeding on them in the spring and the summer months. And then in the winter, encroaching plant species are cut back, so that obviously the marshmallow moth can continue to thrive. So the strongest marshmallow colonies are around the Rye area. You can see some marked on the map just here. These sites contain hundreds of the marshmallow plants each. So one key success here to these sites is they don't get flooded over long periods in the summer when the larvae are feeding underground. So that can be quite a common problem in the marshy areas. If these roots get waterlogged, then obviously the larvae aren't going to survive. So we're kind of helping to just with these sites to just kind of supply some marshmallow plants. So there's potential to create large areas. It takes several years. It's not a quick kind of fix because it takes a long time for the plant's roots to develop to be able to support this moth. So it is a long-term commitment, but yes, something hopefully we can help with. So yeah, so the monitoring of this moth can be done during the day in August to assess the number of plants that have come up each year, so that you can kind of see by counting how many flowering spikes and the abundance of the plant, you can kind of get an idea if the moth is going to be there. And then at night in September to look for the moth themselves. So this later method, you can kind of join to help us survey them in September evenings next year with torches, so we can count how many moths are supported at each site. So that'll be another great opportunity. If you're not feeling very green-fingered, you can get out and come and help us count. So their strongest site is a farm in Sussex, actually, not Kent. But here, the population is unfortunately facing some additional pressures from a local spider population. So that's another factor to be monitored and considered during our surveys to see what we can do to kind of help everything out. So the other priority moth of our project that is found in Sussex is the Sussex emerald. So the larvae of the Sussex emerald moth mostly feed on wild carrot. This is a much more common plant than the marshmallow, but the problem with this is its moth's habitat is enriched vegetated shingle, which does restrict where the suitable habitat can be created or expanded into. So rabbit grazing has been a big problem here. So it's really reduced the wild carrot survival on some of the sites, including kind of here where their long-term population stronghold was, and this is the Dungeness power station. So the wild carrot now struggles to reach maturity and flower outside kind of the fenced areas that they've created just for this moth. So work began this autumn to create further suitable habitat on surrounding areas on Greatstone-on-Sea. So there isn't an obvious presence of rabbits here. So we've cleared some enriched vegetated areas of shrub and sown wild carrot to encourage these moths to spread out their traditional breeding grounds, hopefully increasing their population. So as you might have read already, as of this year, Rye Harbour's Nature Reserve is only one of two places where both the Sussex emerald and the marshmallow breed due to years of dedicated creation efforts by the Sussex Wildlife Trust. For the Sussex emerald, this involved fencing off areas of shingle, growing wild carrot seeds, removing areas of encroaching bramble to provide like the open but safe kind of rabbit-free areas for caterpillars to survive. As you can see, this fenced-in area is also where the Sussex Wildlife Trust runs their moth trap. So after a few years of noticing like rapidly increasing numbers of Sussex emerald appearing in the trap, a search for their caterpillars feeding on wild carrot here was finally successful. So you can see Rebecca here searching for wild carrot, searching on the wild carrot for these caterpillars, and then we found two little green and red striped caterpillars. So yeah, absolutely amazing work done there by the Sussex Wildlife Trust. Because the Sussex emerald adults can get blown in the breeze and turn up in like unexpected places, it is only finding these caterpillars that kind of prove their breeding there. So we'll be holding in next May, we'll be holding training days where you can search these rare caterpillars at Rye Harbour and other potential sites to kind of see if the population is increasing and to just give you some knowledge on what you're looking for.
Thanks, Emma. They are very, very small caterpillars and we do need help finding them. So anyone that wants to come out, it's a nice day and you'll be helping us record how many Sussex emerald moths have got back and breeding in Sussex. But if you don't want to go over to East Sussex, if it's a bit far for you, there are other things, of course, that you can do to help us improve our knowledge of where moths are in the UK. You're already familiar with this because you're aware of butterflies, but finding out that there are 2,500 moth species in the UK can be a bit intimidating to hear for people that are just considering whether to start and get into moth recording. So a good way to start is by getting familiar with some of our most common day-flying moths. It's a great entry point if you want to learn a few more species before committing and purchasing your own garden moth trap. And you don't have to travel to specific nature reserves to come across a magnificent moth and help increase our understanding of moth species. As you already know from taking part in big butterfly counts, a few moths have been sneaking their way into the count in recent years that can be day flying and encountered on your butterfly walks. And one new addition to the count this year was the Jersey tiger that is increasing in distribution and abundance. And I was able to count this one that was nectaring by the side of a path back in the summer. So day flying moths can be bright, colourful and common. But when we look at the amount of records we get sent in, we consistently receive fewer sightings of these moths compared to the butterflies, as many people are still quite unfamiliar with what they look like in comparison. So if you ran a moth traps light overnight in most gardens, you would get over 100 moth species visiting you easily over the course of a year. But moth traps aren't required to see the eye-catching hummingbird hawk moth that annually migrates here though, or many other species that can fly during the day or the night, like the mint moth and the cinnabar. And you can easily encourage these species to breed in your garden if you allow ragwort to grow for the cinnabar moth or have plants in the mint family for the mint moth. Sunny areas in woodland can be great places to find moths as well as butterflies. The mother Shipton moths can be seen during daytime walks across a range of habitat types, but woodland rides are a likely place to see them, and the characteristic witch's face pattern on their wings gives them their common name. Now, speckled yellows are frequently mistaken for butterflies by people less familiar with all of our species, and they are more specific to woodlands because they're associated with woodland food plants like the yellow archangel and wood sage. And lastly, but not least, you may have the impression that all micromoths are too small and similar looking to be able to confidently record them, but you haven't met Jeff yet. This is probably my favourite micromoth. He's got lots of colours going on, including a shimmery blue and some long labial palps in front of his face. And he's very fancy, and they often will gather together in groups, and you'll see them on your woodland walks. And please let us know when you do. Now, if you have limited time for butterfly and moth walks over the summer, then going to a grassland or meadow is where you will encounter some of our most easily spotted day-flying moth species, which are the burnet moths. The 6-spot burnet is often the most commonly recorded, followed by the narrow-bordered 5-spot, but the number of 5-spot burnets has massively declined in Kent. So taking the time to check which of the species you found for the burnet and related forester moths is definitely worthwhile and helps us know where they are. They can look very similar though, and difficult to distinguish. And in general, the forewing of the narrow-bordered 5-spot burnet is longer and more pointed. The upper angle of the hind wing is more pointed. And if you can see the border that their name refers to, that's actually in the hind wing. And it's a bit narrower in the narrow-bordered 5-spot than in the 5-spot burnet. But there are many more species that are under-recorded and could do with some extra people looking out for them. A few of them that are specific to chalk grasslands are the chalk carpet, the lace border, and Onchocerus semirubella, also known by the name rhubarb and custard moth. If you Google this moth, you may get told that it's called the rosy striped knothorn, but I think I prefer rhubarb and custard moth. And these moths all indicate that you're in really good quality chalk grassland, or sometimes they'll pop up in limestone grassland habitats as well. And even though they can fly at night, they'll also be really easily disturbed from their resting spots as you're just walking through areas that have got long grass. So the lace border in particular, it has chalky white wings, a very dainty looking appearance, and is really easily disturbed as you walk through chalk grassland looking for butterflies. And this is one of the species that's been found from several new sites in Kent this year, as they spread across the Downs landscape, which we've outlined in white here. There are a couple of other places in the UK where you might find them, including Box Hill in Surrey and a few sites in Norfolk. But recently, Sussex has gained breeding lace border moths, as they were first found last year by Bob Eade, with a second population found by Vincent Oates this year. And these Sussex populations have very likely colonised from the continent rather than from the Kent populations. And they may already be colonising other South Downs sites, just being overlooked, as they are quite small. And Steve's leg is shown here for scale of just how small they are. Definitely one to look out for on your butterfly walks next year, and particularly in areas with their food plants, which is wild thyme and wild marjoram.
Okay, so yeah, some of the highlights so far of the project. Kind of we've been engaging a lot of people with moths for the first time. So you can see there's a couple of children here kind of getting involved and kind of actually seeing real life moths for the first time, which has been really exciting and really rewarding to see. And we've discovered some of the country's rarest moth species, including new breeding site for the black-veined moth and 6 new breeding sites for the fiery clearwing, which is confirmed by finding their eggs, which is this top right picture here. So you can see, so on the stem of a curled dock, and they are tiny. So the more people we can get out looking for those as well, kind of, and that is how we were able to find these new breeding sites, with the help of volunteers. So yes, our project and the volunteers itself is already increasing the understanding of these endangered moths. So we've got loads more planned for next year, and we've got events as well planned for next year to kind of help bring even more highlights and hopefully more good news on the moths, really. So yeah, just to kind of sum up before we answer any questions, we hope that by the end of the project, more people will be out recording both the common and the rarer moth species and getting involved with the vital habitat creation work that will allow the rare moth populations to survive and thrive until these magnificent moths can spread out of Kent and be appreciated by all of those across the South East. I should say, because we've had a couple of questions before that I have answered, but if anyone wants to get involved, then you can just email me in any of the things and we can add you to the various lists to get involved in either growing, surveying, anything like that. So I think maybe if we can share my email at the end, I'll type it in the chat, so hopefully you guys will get it if you need it. Thank you.